Bullies dragged the shy girl into the bathroom, but a SWAT dad's team was training right next door. The sound of muffled crying echoed against the cold, tiled walls, reverberating through the empty corridor like a wounded animal's plea for mercy. It was just after lunch break on a Wednesday afternoon, and the hallway outside the girls' bathroom was eerily empty, save for the occasional flutter of discarded papers caught in the draft from the ventilation system. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that seemed to dance with malevolent intent. 3 older girls, their eyes filled with cruel amusement and faces twisted into expressions of calculated malice, had cornered a girl barely half their size. They didn't stop at insults this time. Rough hands grabbed her by the wrists, yanking her forward with such force that her sneakers squeaked against the polished linoleum floor. She stumbled, her worn canvas backpack sliding down her shoulder as her books scattered across the hallway like fallen leaves, pages fluttering open to reveal careful notes written in her neat handwriting. The bathroom door slammed shut with a resounding bang that seemed to seal her fate. Her voice trembled as she whispered, barely audible above the sound of her own rapid breathing, "Please just leave me alone." The bullies only laughed, their voices echoing off the tile walls in a chorus of cruelty that would haunt her dreams for weeks to come. One twisted her arm, while another forced her toward the far stall, their movements coordinated like a pack of predators who had done this before. It was the same routine they had perfected over months of torment: corner, humiliate, and leave her shaking in fear. But today, they didn't know who was nearby, just 2 hallways away inside the old gymnasium with its faded basketball court lines and championship banners hanging from the rafters. A tactical training session was underway, the kind that drew curious glances from passing faculty members who weren't accustomed to seeing heavily armed officers moving through their hallways with military precision. Her father, Sergeant Marcus Chen, was in full tactical gear, leading his elite team through mock hostage rescue drills that had been requested by the district after a string of nationwide school incidents had parents demanding better security measures. He had no idea his own daughter was about to face the most terrifying moment of her school life, trapped just yards away from where he practiced saving strangers. In just minutes, their worlds would collide in a way no one could ever forget, setting in motion events that would change everything about how the school handled bullying and how a father's love could manifest in the most unexpected ways. The girl no one defended, Emma Chen, had always been the quiet one in every classroom, every hallway, every social situation she found herself in. Petite for her age, soft-spoken to the point where teachers often had to ask her to repeat herself, she was happiest when drawing intricate sketches in the corner of the library during lunch periods. Her artwork filled notebook after notebook with detailed portraits of birds, flowers, and imaginary landscapes that existed only in her gentle mind. Her classmates barely noticed her, except for the ones who saw her silence as weakness, her kindness as an invitation to cruelty. That academic year, the bullying had escalated from casual indifference to active torment. It started with whispers in the cafeteria, hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when she walked by, followed by not-so-subtle pointing and mocking laughter that made her cheeks burn with embarrassment. Then came the comments about her clothes, second-hand items her father had carefully selected from thrift stores, trying his best to keep up with teenage fashion trends he didn't understand. The bullies would make loud observations about her vintage sneakers or her retro backpack, words dripping with sarcasm that cut deeper than any blade. Next came the physical harassment, shoving her books to the floor in crowded hallways, accidentally bumping into her hard enough to send her stumbling, pulling her hair when teachers weren't looking. Teachers seemed blind to it all, too busy managing overcrowded classrooms or unwilling to step into the complicated mess of teenage social dynamics. When Emma tried to report incidents, she was met with well-meaning but ineffective responses. Just ignore them. They're probably just jealous, or, have you tried being friendlier? The adults in her life, with the exception of her father, seemed to exist in a parallel universe where bullying was a minor inconvenience rather than a daily torment that was slowly eroding her sense of self-worth. Emma, desperate not to cause trouble for her father, who already carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, kept it all to herself. She perfected the art of fake smiles and invented elaborate stories about her day when he asked how school was going. She would describe imaginary conversations with classmates and fictional group projects, anything to avoid adding her problems to his already overwhelming list of responsibilities. Her father, Sergeant Marcus Chen, had raised her alone since her mother passed away when Emma was just 8 years old, a loss that had fundamentally changed the trajectory of both their lives. His existence revolved around the SWAT team, long shifts that stretched into the night, unpredictable hours that made planning impossible, and constant exposure to danger that left him hypervigilant, even in peaceful moments. At home, though, he transformed into someone completely different. He was gentle, protective, and always trying to make her laugh with terrible dad jokes and silly voices that brought out the rare smile that reminded him so much of his late wife. He would help with homework he barely understood, attempt to braid her hair with fingers more accustomed to handling weapons than delicate strands, and listen patiently to her excited descriptions of books she was reading or drawings she was working on. But he had no idea about the battles his daughter faced in the hallways of Lincoln Middle School, the daily war of attrition that was slowly breaking down her spirit. He was trained to protect people from external threats, but he couldn't shield her from the cruelty that came from within the very institution meant to nurture her growth and learning. On that particular Wednesday, the lunch period felt like a trap from the moment Emma entered the cafeteria. The usual suspects were already there. Madison Torres, the self-proclaimed queen of their grade, surrounded by her loyal followers who hung on her every word like gospel truth. Emma sat alone at her usual table in the corner, quietly eating the peanut butter and jelly sandwich her dad had made that morning, complete with a hand-drawn smiley face on the brown paper bag. She was halfway through sketching a detailed drawing of a cardinal she had seen outside her bedroom window when she heard the familiar snicker behind her. Her shoulders tensed involuntarily, her pencil freezing mid-stroke as her fight-or-flight response kicked in. "Hey, Mouse," Madison said, her voice carrying that particular tone of false sweetness that always preceded something awful. It was Madison, flanked by her constant companions, Ashley Rivera and Chloe Bennett, all wearing matching expressions of smug superiority that made Emma's stomach clench with dread. "Nice drawing," Ashley added, leaning over Emma's shoulder to examine the sketch. "Looks like something a kindergartner would do. Maybe you should stick to coloring books instead." Emma didn't look up, her cheeks burning with humiliation. She just closed her notebook carefully, trying not to let her hands shake, and attempted to finish her lunch in peace. But Madison wasn't finished with her entertainment for the day. She reached across the table and grabbed the notebook, ignoring Emma's sharp intake of breath. "Oh, little Mouse is shy," Madison mocked, flipping through pages of Emma's most private thoughts and artistic expressions. "Look at all these baby drawings. What are you, 5 years old?" "Give it back," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible above the general cafeteria noise. Chloe leaned down, her voice dripping with fake sweetness that fooled no one. "Or what? Are you going to squeak at us?" They laughed at their own joke, a sound that made other students look over with mixture of curiosity and relief that they weren't the target. Then Madison's eyes darkened with an expression Emma had learned to fear more than anything else in her young life. "Come with us, Mouse. We have a special surprise waiting for you in the bathroom." Emma knew exactly what that meant. Her heart began pounding so hard She was sure everyone in the cafeteria could hear it. The surprises always involved humiliation, sometimes physical pain, and always left her feeling smaller and more worthless than before. But before she could react or attempt to escape, they each grabbed an arm and pulled her roughly from the bench. Students throughout the cafeteria saw it happen. Some looked uncomfortable, others seemed entertained by the drama, but not a single person moved to help or alert a teacher. The bystander effect was in full force, each person assuming someone else would step in, until responsibility diffused into inaction. The hallway was completely deserted, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they dragged Emma toward the bathroom at the far end of the building. She struggled weakly, pleading quietly with words that fell on deaf ears. "Please, I didn't do anything wrong. I never hurt any of you." "You exist," Chloe sneered, her grip tightening painfully around Emma's wrist. "That's enough of a crime for us." The bathroom door swung open with an ominous creak, and they shoved her inside with enough force to send her stumbling into the row of sinks. The smell of industrial disinfectant mixed with the metallic tang of fear that seemed to permeate the air around her. Madison locked the door behind them with a deliberate click that sounded like a prison cell closing. "Time for a little makeover," Ashley smirked, pulling out a pair of sharp scissors from her bag with theatrical flair. The metal blades caught the harsh fluorescent light, creating threatening shadows on the walls. Emma's breath caught in her throat as true terror washed over her. She backed up until her shoulders hit the cold tile wall, trapped with nowhere to run. "Please, no. Don't do this." But her desperate words only made them grin wider, feeding off her fear like vampires drawing sustenance from blood. They moved closer, forming a semicircle that blocked any possible escape route. Meanwhile, in the gymnasium just 2 hallways away, Sergeant Marcus Chen barked commands with the authority of someone accustomed to life-or-death situations. "Breach! Clear left! Secure the hostage!" His SWAT team moved with practiced precision, their black uniforms and tactical gear blending into a coordinated blur of professional motion. It was supposed to be a routine school safety drill, the kind that had become increasingly common as districts across the country grappled with security concerns. Principal Anderson had invited the local SWAT team to train on campus, hoping to reassure worried parents and staff members who had been requesting enhanced safety measures since the beginning of the school year. Marcus had been focused entirely on the operation, mentally running through scenarios and evaluating his team's response times, when a sound cut through the air that made his blood run cold. At first, it was faint, barely perceptible above the sound of equipment and radio chatter, but there it was again, a sharp, high-pitched cry that was definitely human and definitely in distress. He paused mid-step, every instinct honed by years of dangerous work, screaming that something was wrong. This wasn't part of any drill they had planned. The sound had come from somewhere in the building, somewhere close enough to hear, but far enough away to be muffled by walls and distance. He motioned urgently to his second-in-command, Officer James Rodriguez, who had worked with Marcus for over 5 years and had learned to trust his partner's instincts implicitly. "You hear that?" Rodriguez nodded grimly, his hand instinctively moving to his radio. "Bathroom wing. East corridor." They moved fast, abandoning the training scenario without a second thought. Marcus's heart was pounding, not from the physical exertion of running through school hallways, but from a cold, gut-deep fear that was forming in the pit of his stomach. He didn't know why yet, couldn't explain the overwhelming sense of dread that was consuming him, but something told him this was about to become very personal. Back in the bathroom, Madison had cornered Emma near the row of sinks, while Ashley pinned her arms against the cold tile wall. Chloe held the scissors with theatrical menace, opening and closing the blades with deliberate precision designed to maximize terror. "You think you're better than us, Mouse?" Chloe hissed, bringing the scissors closer to Emma's face. Walking around here with your sad little drawings and your pathetic lunches, acting like you're too good to talk to anyone." Emma shook her head desperately, tears streaming down her face. "No, please. I never thought that. I just want to be left alone." "Too late for that," Madison sneered. "We've decided you need a new look, something that matches your personality better." The door exploded inwards so hard it rattled against the wall, the sound reverberating through the small space like a gunshot. 3 SWAT officers in full tactical gear filled the doorway, their imposing presence immediately transforming the atmosphere from one of teenage cruelty to deadly serious law enforcement intervention. Their tactical vests, their helmets, their black gloves, the weapons at their sides, it was like a wall of professional steel had materialized out of thin air. The bullies' casual cruelty evaporated instantly, replaced by genuine terror as they found themselves face to face with armed officers who looked like they had stepped out of an action movie. At the front of the group stood Marcus Chen, and for a split second that seemed to stretch into eternity, time froze completely. Emma's wide, tear-streaked eyes met his through his tactical visor. Recognition flashed between them like lightning, followed immediately by a complex mixture of relief, embarrassment, and overwhelming emotion. "Dad?" Her voice broke on the single syllable, barely audible above the sound of everyone's rapid breathing. Marcus's expression shifted from professional alertness to shock, then to pure, controlled fury as he took in the scene before him. His daughter cornered, tears streaming down her face, 3 other girls with scissors in hand and guilt written across their features. "Step away from her." His voice was low, dangerous, carrying all the authority of someone who had faced down armed criminals and emerged victorious. Right now. The 3 bullies froze like deer caught in headlights, the scissors trembling in Chloe's suddenly unsteady grip. The casual cruelty that had seemed so empowering moments before now felt pathetically insignificant in the face of real consequences. "You have 3 seconds, Marcus continued, stepping forward with measured precision. Every inch of his posture conveyed that he was not someone to be tested, not someone who made empty threats. 3. Ashley immediately released Emma's arms, stepping back so quickly she nearly tripped over her own feet. 2. Madison backed away from the sinks, her hands shaking visibly as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Chloe's fingers loosened involuntarily, and the scissors clattered to the tiled floor with a metallic ring that seemed to echo forever in the sudden silence. Marcus stepped between the bullies and his daughter, placing a protective arm around Emma's trembling shoulders. His team moved with professional efficiency, guiding the 3 girls toward the door, where the school security officer and Principal Anderson waited with expressions of shock and dawning comprehension. Emma buried her face in her father's tactical vest, sobbing with a mixture of relief, residual terror, and overwhelming gratitude. He gently tilted her chin up with one gloved hand, his trained eyes quickly scanning her face and arms for any signs of physical harm. "You're safe now, baby girl," he whispered, his voice soft and gentle despite the tactical gear and the adrenaline still coursing through his system. "Nobody is ever going to hurt you like this again." Outside in the hallway, word of what had happened spread through the school with the speed that only teenage gossip could achieve. Students gathered in clusters, watching wide-eyed as 3 crying bullies were escorted down the hall, flanked by SWAT team members. Their usual arrogance replaced by genuine fear and the dawning realization that actions have consequences. Teachers emerged from classrooms, trying to understand what had transformed a routine training exercise into a real intervention. Principal Anderson found himself trying to explain to parents who began calling within minutes how a bullying incident had escalated to the point where tactical officers had to intervene to protect a student. The story became legend within hours. No one would ever forget the day Sergeant Chen discovered what had been happening to his daughter, and how a routine training exercise had turned into the most dramatic anti-bullying intervention in the school's history. Emma Chen would never be the shy, invisible mouse again. From that day forward, she walked through the hallways with her head held high, knowing that she was the girl whose father would move heaven and earth to protect her. The other students looked at her with a new respect, understanding that behind her quiet demeanor was someone whose family would not tolerate cruelty or injustice. The school administration implemented new anti-bullying policies within a week, trained teachers to recognize the signs of harassment, and establish clear consequences for students who chose to torment their classmates. The three bullies found themselves facing not only school disciplinary action, but also having to explain their behavior to their own parents, who were mortified by their children's cruelty. And Marcus Chen learned that sometimes the most important rescues happen not in dramatic hostage situations or dangerous criminal encounters, but in ordinary school bathrooms where children learn whether the world is a place where cruelty goes unpunished or where love and protection will always find a way to break through.